Hey everybody, thanks for joining today. Um, we're going to talk about titled this webinar "Breaking the Spiral of More with Attack Signal Intelligence." I don't know if you're tracking Vectra movements the past few weeks. A lot of activity around what we call attack signal intelligence, and I'm going to walk you through um, why why attack signal intelligence, more so than what and how, and a little bit, so you know you're talking to Mark Wataziak. People call me Woj. You can tell from the last name. I lead product marketing at Vectra. Always love connecting, so feel free to email me, link with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever you choose. I'm always enjoying, continuing the conversation. And, in this webinar, just a few things. Obviously, I love interaction. So use the Q&A box. If at any point you have questions, we'll cover Q&A at the end. Also, please, I only get better at these. We only get better at these at providing information to you if you provide the feedback at the end of the webinar. And then finally, we've got some additional resources available that you can download as well. So with that said, what we're going to cover today, pretty simple. I'm a big believer in threes. And I think many of you, when you're talking to vendors, you fundamentally want to know, hey, what problem do you solve? So we'll talk through that. We'll talk through how we see the problem and the problem we solve for security. You also want to know, okay, what approach do you take to the problem? How do you do it? And we'll cover a little bit about that, quite a bit about that. And that's where at the heart of attack signal intelligence is. And I'll walk you through not only what it is, but how it works. And then finally, what good is a story if we're not communicating the value outcome? What does it mean for you? What's in it for you? So fundamentally, we're going to break down these three questions, and ideally, if we can answer these three questions effectively, we can continue our conversation with you all. So, and then we'll wrap up with a little bit of Q&A and kind of give you a glimpse of what's coming in future webinars. I always like to start some of these, and I did this at Gartner Security and Risk in London back in September. And I know this isn't interactive unless you put something in chat or Q&A, but you could say it out loud if you so choose. One question, here's a little challenge for you. Summarize cybersecurity in one word. Right? And when I pose this question to the audience at Gartner, I hear all kinds of things: complexity, risk, threat, all these sorts of things. And it was great to get that feedback and that kind of interaction going. But we like to think of it as this. You think about one word that describes what cybersecurity teams are up against. It's more, right? And to kind of put that into context, you think about it, we think in the way we see it at Vectra is, man, you've got a lot to deal with, right? From attack surface to vulnerabilities to attackers becoming even more evasive, figuring out ways in and around the organization. There's more security categories being thrown at you, more vendors, more tools, more skills that are required, et cetera, et cetera. And when you think about just the sheer magnitude of more that, and we as a vendor think about, how do we empathize with that? How do we understand that and begin to grasp that? And one way to think about it is cloud as well. Think about cloud and the impact it's having on the SOC, and this whole essence of there's just simply more cloud deployments, whether it's services or containers or applications. Obviously, there's more cloud holes, vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, gaps, blind spots, et cetera. And then what we're seeing is just sheer more cloud compromise, right? I think IBM said 45% of breaches were cloud-based in 2021. I'd wager a guess that that's going to be above 50% in 2022, and that continues to increase. And then obviously burnout, right? And this whole notion of more is just creating more and more challenges for security teams. And we call it a vicious spiral, right? So when it comes to attackers, threats, two facts, two brutal truths. There's always going to be more attack surface. That's why there's cloud security posture management, SaaS posture management, things like that are growing and evolving. There's always going to be attackers that are evasive. They're always going to try and blend in. We see this in not only the increase of cloud-based attacks, but also leveraging identity as a way in, and blending in, compromising credentials, et cetera, account takeovers, what have you. Which leads us to, well, we got to buy more tools, right? You got to buy, you're going to have to triage more alerts. You're going to have to tune more rules. And this is just creating this vicious spiral of increasing complexity. And then the worst of all is obviously the burnout problem, right? And this is core to how we think about and kind of the manifestation of attack signal intelligence. Is you just have more burnout, more turnover, more analysts, even I think I saw one stat that was like 50+% are considering leaving the industry, et cetera. And it's because of this more that 2/3 of them are stressed, right? And experiencing stress and anxiety in their personal lives. And it's another really insightful thing that IBM found. Take this whole notion of more being thrown at the security practitioner, the security leader, and couple that with threat detection and response is just getting more complicated, right? So if you look across the attack surface, attackers are getting evasive, attack surface is expanding. You've got a number of different tools that you could deploy. Yes, EDR, is effective, but not all encompassing, right? IDS tools are limited to known attacks, signatures, what have you, et cetera. And then you couple that with, almost every cloud provider has native tools, and you add, you just continue to add all of this telemetry and this signal and try to make sense of all of it. And vendors just continue to push all of this on you, while attackers love it because they can thrive in it. They can hide. They can, make their way into an organization and move around the organization. So this complexity is actually one of the catalysts to the growth in identity cloud, network-based attacks and breaches over the last, number of years. Despite this all, we get to the core problem, right? And fundamentally, Vectra believes that the problem is this, right? So when we talk to security leaders, this is research we did at the end of 2021, and 7 out of 10 of them think they may be breached, but don't know it. We call this the unknown, right? The unknown threat. We think this is the problem that still remains despite all of the tools and the technology and what have you. And we call this the unknown. And in order to break that spiral of more and erase the unknown, our contention is the focus needs to be here, right? The focus needs to be signal clarity, right? The only way you're going to reduce burnout, increase skill set, recruit and retain top talent in the security space and the SOC is to, give them better signal, right? So fundamentally, when you think about, hey, we think we're breached, but we don't know it, to me, that screams, gosh, we just lack signal clarity, right? So we would argue that the only more security needs is more signal clarity, and how do we attack this problem head on, right? How do we we know that the attack surface is expanding. We know attackers are getting more evasive and sophisticated. We know analysts are getting burnt out from the noise. How do we deliver more signal clarity? And I love this quote from Kevin, happens to be my boss here at Vectra. And this really kind of rooted us in attack signal intelligence, and we'll get into that in a second. But think about this. It's time for security vendors are held accountable for the efficacy of their signal, right? So we begin to think about as a threat detection and response platform and services company, are we holding ourselves accountable for the efficacy of the signal that we're delivering to the SOC analyst? And how do we go about doing that? Because we believe fundamentally signal clarity arms human intelligence. So whether you're familiar with Vectra or not, security AI driven. We've been doing AI for over a decade. But we think about AI and human intelligence working hand in hand. How can we deliver what we call that signal clarity, that attack signal intelligence, for the sheer purpose of arming human intelligence? Right? Can we automate threat detection, triage, and prioritization and provide that intelligence signal to the SOC so that analyst can do what they're really good at doing, using critical thinking, hunting, investigating, responding to attacks in progress? How can we take signal and turn it into intelligent action that a human takes? And that was the catalyst behind attack signal intelligence, and where we continue to innovate and strive to improve signal clarity. Now, how we go about doing it, our approach to this fundamentally is pretty simple. Right? We've called it the 3 C's: coverage, clarity, and control. So this is our approach to kind of breaking out of the spiral and erasing the unknown threat, right? First of all, fundamentally coverage, right? Do we provide coverage across the attack surface? And secondly, signal clarity is at the core, right? This is what we call attack signal intelligence. And then thirdly, third pillar of our approach is intelligent control. Are we integrating investigations and providing targeted response actions that an analyst can take? Are we making the analyst workflow easier, more intuitive through the analyst experience or the user experience in our product? And can we do this not only across our entire threat detection and response platform, but also through MDR services and in partnership with a robust ecosystem of technology? So I'm going to walk through these kind of 3 pillars and kind of the role attack signal intelligence plays as core to our ability to hold ourselves accountable for the efficacy of our signal. So first, yes, attack surface coverage, 4 of the 5, with tight integrations with EDR partners. So Vectra NDR for network, both on-premises and cloud-based networks. Vectra CDR for public cloud. Today it's AWS, expanding into other public cloud providers, Azure, GCP, et cetera, in the future. CDR for SaaS. Today M365, a big target for attackers. And then finally, IDR for identity. Azure AD is the primary surface we cover today. So attack coverage across 4 of the 5 attack surfaces, with MDR services to wrap around that in support of that threat detection and response workflow. We'll talk a little bit about MDR towards the end of this webinar. So check. We've got telemetry and data coming from network, public cloud, SaaS, and identity, and integrating with endpoint. we're understanding what the attacker sees. Here's where attack signal intelligence comes into play from a signal clarity perspective. So we pull that telemetry in, we understand what's happening across the environment, across the attack surface, to one, do detections, right? So think like an attacker. It's the first thing that's kind of paramount to attack signal intelligence. Can we zero in on attacker TTPs, right? Can we use behavior-based detection models to detect when those TTPs are occurring? And then can we optimize ML to deliver detection signal, right? So this is, and I'll give you a pictorial view of how this works from an analyst experience thing. So the first pillar of attack signal intelligence is, how do we use AI to drive detections that actually think like an attacker? Second pillar, triage. Can we use AI to know what's malicious? Can we tailor it to a customer's specific environment, knowing what is malicious versus benign in that environment? What is a real attack versus not an attack, et cetera? Can we analyze those detections for relevance in that customer's environment? And if we do that, can we reduce alert noise? And in some cases, we've seen customers reduce the number of alerts that analysts are getting by upwards of 80%. So can we do this in the background so that an analyst doesn't have to triage hundreds of thousands of alerts in a given day, week, what have you? The third and most critical component of attack signal intelligence is that signal clarity. So if we're thinking like an attacker and using AI to do detections, zeroing in on those attacker behaviors, those TTPs, catering it to the environment to know what's malicious, then how do we elevate the ones that are most important, most urgent to the company, most urgent to the business? By correlating those detections, providing a unified view, and then sorted by impact to the business or urgency level, if you will. The AI-driven prioritization model is the most pivotal value coming out of attack signal intelligence. This is what we strive to. We strive to this signal clarity and the effectiveness of this signal clarity using AI to do so. Now, visually, and obviously we do this to reduce analyst burnout and fundamentally arm the analysts to reduce risk, to spend their time on what matters most, and then obviously deliver value to not only the security organization, but the business at large. Visually, what this looks like is across your attack surfaces, NDR, CDR, IDR, CDR, public cloud, and SaaS, we're looking for, using AI to look for detections and then measuring the relevancy of those detections in that customer environment. We evaluate each entity against observed attack profiles and create what we call an attack rating, right? That attack rating helps us triage and understand what is important. We use that to pinpoint what we deem as malicious or what is an indicative of malicious activity, to tell the analyst, here are the 3 things you need to focus on, right? Then the analyst can do what they're best at. We call this AI-enabled operations or attack signal intelligent operations, where the analyst has enriched data with context. We put answers at their fingertips. So when they're investigating, they're not pivoting from tool to tool, they're not jumping around. They can drill right in and see how that attack is manifesting, how it's progressing, where it originated, et cetera. And then finally, ultimately, what good is all that if you can't take response action, if you can't contain or stop the breach or stop the attack from becoming a breach? Any number of integrated and native response controls, from isolating an endpoint, locking account, triggering a SOAR playbook, within Phantom or XOR or you name it. So it's a little bit about how we do it. What this means, I'm going to talk a little bit more about AI-enabled operations, because this is where attack signal intelligence in terms of like how we arm an analyst to do what they're best at. Again, I think in three. So here's the three pillars of intelligent control, powered by attack signal intelligence. So how are we empowering analysts to do what they're best at? Integrated investigations. I touched on this. How do we use context derived on attacks to put answers at the analyst's fingertips? Can we do it? Can we do it in a way that reduces the need to jump from tool to tool to kind of try and aggregate data from disparate tools together so that you're trying to paint a picture of what's happening in the attack? Can we reduce that? Can we do it all in one user interface? If we do, we can help the analyst expedite that investigation, understand truly what's happening. And in the end, with all that context, imagine what you can do from a threat hunting perspective. So integrating all of that context and enriched data together so that an analyst can investigate as quickly as possible, investigate and hunt as quickly as possible. Second pillar, automating workflows. How can we streamline manual tasks using existing tech? All right, so tech that you already have in place. Are we integrating with EDR, SIM, SOAR, et cetera, ITSM, ticketing, and process controls, enriching alerts with context from EDR, streamlining SIM reporting, right, lowering cost and complexity in the SIM, leveraging your ticketing processes that are already in place and those workflows. So obviously automating workflows. Fundamentally, that's to drive control. Again, coverage, clarity, and control. We provide the attack surface coverage. Attack signal intelligence gives you the clarity to do what? Take targeted response, right? Take response actions that take control of that attack. So our response actions, empowered by attack signal intelligence, are flexible. So you can trigger it manually, or you can trigger it automatically. And I touched on each one of these in terms of like locking an account, isolating an endpoint, triggering a SOAR playbook. What this looks like from an analyst perspective is, at the end, how are we increasing the throughput of the analyst? How are we arming that analyst to deliver value to the security organization and to the overall business and reducing risk? And how they do that is pretty simple in terms of like, just build this out. What happens? Like visually, I do a demo, but we wouldn't have time for a demo. Analysts would access a landscape of detections that we've seen across the environment, visualized from low to critical risk. This is where that scoring comes into play. You can drill in and see a prioritized list sorted by impact and severity. We call this urgency level. Here's where that prioritization model tells you, okay, this has an urgency score, urgency rating, or urgency level of 90, right? It's one of the more critical attacks to jump into. From there, you can drill into those attacks and investigate them in terms of like the attack profile, how it's progressing. Being armed with this context and this information, you trigger a response action. You contain or stop that attack. You can leverage your existing tools and EDR, identity, et cetera, to integrate those response actions. In the end, we built this around a attack signal intelligent ecosystem. So what does that mean in terms of like how we're taking attack signal intelligence and making it part of a existing tech that you have, an ecosystem of partners and technical integrations and what have you. And we think about it in four ways. Data sources is the first. Are we pulling in data from the right sources in order to analyze, in order to arrive at signal clarity? Second, how are we integrating from a workflow automation perspective? SOAR, SIM, ITSM, ticketing, et cetera. Is attack signal intelligence helping to automate workflows and streamline them using tech that you already have in place? Third pillar of an attack signal intelligence ecosystem is context. Who else has great context on what's happening in an environment? Well, EDR vendors are one example, right? But also cloud providers. What context are we deriving from those integrations and those technology partners to pull into to build signal efficacy and signal clarity? And then fourth, obviously, response controls. How are we integrating with existing EDR providers, cloud providers, et cetera, to ensure that you can take action on that signal clarity that we're delivering? We do all of this in a single platform, right? So talked about our three pillars: coverage, clarity, and control. Coverage across public cloud, SaaS, identity, and network. You can see the different coverage areas we have there, from AWS to Microsoft 365, et cetera. We take that coverage and turn it into clarity. We use attack signal intelligence, AI-driven attack signal intelligence to do detections, to automate detections, triage, and prioritization of threats. We use that attack signal intelligence to arm humans to do what they're best at: do investigations and hunting, at the same time reducing manual tasks, integrating and automating workflows, and then obviously arming them to take a targeted response. This platform is supported by and augmented by Vectra MDR services, and we just made an announcement about this today in terms of like MDR and how does MDR play, and obviously ecosystem. You can see a number of integrations that are supported with the ecosystem. So when we think about attack defense and we think about threat detection and response, we think platform, services, and ecosystem. And how do we use all three to deliver that coverage, clarity, and control you need to get ahead and stay ahead of attacks? In the end, why do we do all of this? Why? What's in it for you? It's that whole, what problem do you solve? What's your approach to the problem? Okay, what's the catch? What's in it for me? And again, three things, right? So when we think about why are we doing attack signal intelligence, why do we think about it through the lens of coverage, clarity, and control? And fundamentally, it's, hey, are we future-proofing your defense, right? Are we helping you build SOC, business resilience, SOC resilience? And we measure this based on how quickly we can get you up and running, right? We measure this by, are we reducing or improving traditional SOC metrics of, detection and response times? Are we helping you be more resilient by providing the reinforcements with Vectra MDR? Are we doing this in a way that is, we call it a shared responsibility model? Efficiency. Are we reducing time, cost, and complexity? Remember, at the beginning, I talked about more. We do not want to be the vendor that just keeps feeding the spiral of more. So how is attack signal intelligence helping the SOC be more efficient? Are we reducing time, cost, and complexity? Whether it's time, cost, and complexity relative to SIM, whether it's time, cost, and complexity relative to manual day-to-day tasks that an analyst has to do, whether it's reducing time, cost, and complexity through optimizing the investments you already have. Right? So resilience, efficiency, and then ultimately, if we can do those, we can deliver efficacy. This is the ultimate outcome. The ultimate outcome of this approach is to improve the efficacy of the SOC analyst, reducing alert fatigue and burnout, increasing their throughput, having them focus on what they're really good at: critical thinking, investigation, hunting, response, and then ultimately building their skills and expertise across cloud, identity, network, attacker behavior, et cetera. And we do all three of these things in a way where we share responsibility. Right, we could talk a little bit. You should check out Vectra MDR announcement that was made today. We introduced this whole notion of a shared responsibility model, which means not only we hold ourselves accountable for the efficacy of signal, we also hold ourselves accountable for the efficacy of your defense, and we do that through a shared responsibility model. And there'll be a webinar on that actually coming up in early December. So stay tuned for that one. So in the end, what are we talking? What is attack signal intelligence? It's at the core of what we do. We use attack signal intelligence to erase the unknown and ultimately turn the tables on attackers. With it, we've built, we take this approach, right? So you use attack signal intelligence to do detection, AI-driven detection, prioritization, integrate investigations, targeted response. You do it across these 4 attack surfaces: NDR, CDR for public cloud, CDR for SaaS, IDR for identity. You wrap MDR services around that, and you leverage an already existing ecosystem in order to bring it all together. That is the gist of what I'm talking about. Ooh, I'm missing a couple slides at the end of this, but let's see if we can jump to Q&A. If there's any questions. Oh, here's a few. One second, let me pop this up so I can see it. Bear with me. I am... Oh, hopefully I answered question 1 in the course of the discussion. We have an EDR today, so how does ASI incorporate EDR signal? Our integrations with EDR, we pull in for host context and targeted response controls. Stay tuned for more we're doing around the EDR space from a prioritization perspective. No, we will not ever be an EDR or have an agent, but we believe in partnering with the top EDR providers and pulling that context in. So stay tuned on further investments and innovations there. I get this question. I got this question at the last webinar I did. It sounds like XDR. Is Vectra positioning itself as an XDR solution? No. We're not positioning ourselves as XDR. It's interesting because it comes up in customer conversations. Oh, are you an XDR? And we always turn back and say, do you want us to be? Do you have an XDR strategy, and do we fit into your XDR strategy? Then great, you can call us an XDR, but we're not positioning ourselves as an XDR. We position more around the problem we solve and less around the technology acronym or category. So someone did see the Vectra MDR announcement today. How does attack signal intelligence work via MDR? Our Vectra MDR leverages our platform. So if attack signal intelligence is core to our platform, core to how we deliver signal clarity, that's inherent in our MDR offering. Now, a customer may choose to use our MDR in a number of different ways, whether it's for simple, attack signal intelligence monitoring and detections, and then we do we escalate to your teams to do the investigation response. We could work hand in hand on different cases, et cetera. So there's a number of different ways you can leverage Vectra MDR in combination with attack signal intelligence in our platform. Let me just see if I can get this third question. Every server needs to reinstall the agent for monitoring on the server. Is it okay if we install an agent or another app, exclude from the original one from Vectra? Let's table that one. I'll see if we'll follow up with you, Iqbal, on that question, but it's a great question. Any specific requirements from us related to monitoring? No. yeah, we don't deploy agents, or we're not agent based. We're cloud based, sensor based. So, but let's dive in a little bit deeper on that on that question set. Any other questions? Late questions. We went through that pretty quickly, but hey, I'm conscious of all your time. I don't want to take more of your time. But yeah, in summary, I think, the way we're thinking about this is, heck, you all have a lot more to deal with. The last thing we want to do is give you more to think about and add more to your workload. We think the key to that is, focusing on the unknown threat, erasing that. We think the best way to erase that is signal clarity. We call it attack signal intelligence, because we believe you should be holding vendors like us accountable for our signal clarity, for the efficacy of our signal. You should be holding all your vendors accountable for that, and then obviously wrapping a shared responsibility model around all of that. So with that, if there's no other questions, thanks again, everybody, for your time. Please provide feedback. I'd appreciate it. And I'll see you on the next one.